Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What's Cracking. This week, we're joined by Zach Damman from Learfield, VP of Social Activations. We're also joined by Lexi Van Camp, Paid Media and Social Content Strategist at Legends. Thank you both for joining us today. I'm really excited about our topic of conversation. We're going to be looking at collegiate sports. So let's jump on in. To kick things off, guys, one thing we always like to ask our guests is how did you guys get started in the sports industry? So what really led you guys to working in the areas that you're both in now, and that kind of started you guys in the path of working within collegiate sports? Let's start with Lexi.
Yeah, so I work with Legends at the University of Wisconsin, but I actually was an alumni of the University of Wisconsin. So was a retail and consumer behavior major, which sounds really far-fetched from what I do now. But it was really about the consumer behavior. How did you get people to buy, purchase, move them emotionally? So I did a bunch of marketing agencies. I did the nonprofit realm. And then I kind of found this opportunity within Legends and the University of Wisconsin. It kind of spoke to me at first because obviously I'm an alumni. I love the Badgers. I love attending sporting events. But then I really kind of fallen in love with collegiate sports. There's nothing really like it. It's a whole different fan base. It's very loyal. It's very true. You're finding people all over the country. But that's kind of where I got my start, was just working through marketing and nonprofit and then kind of ending up here. So I'm loving it ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how about yourself, Zach?
Yeah, so I was a marketing major in college, really honed into the social media space post-graduation. So I worked a variety of jobs on the agency side of things, and found a niche in retail actually. So I worked in social media for a couple of different retail companies for about 5 years. I then made the jump to college athletics with IMG College in 2017. And it was really more focused around the social media piece, something that, I'd become accustomed with, and just kind of translating that into the athletic space. So it wasn't really something that I was seeking out post-graduation. I wasn't, honed in, I want to work in college athletics. It was more so just kind of happenstance and with my experience in the social space kind of led me down that direction. So I've been with Learfield for about 4.5 years now. We've really grown out a social team corporately, working directly with our properties on campus as well as the athletic departments across the country. It's been a really awesome experience. I get to work with a ton of awesome people every day. So that's how I got to where I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing the stories of like how everyone gets started in sport. I feel like it's all always different, but there's always similarities too. And I think, both of you guys talked about the uniqueness of collegiate athletics and kind of enjoying working in that space. A lot of our watchers and our listeners would kind of be a lot more familiar with the pro side. So what would you guys say kind of sets collegiate athletics apart? And why are those fandoms so unique and so different than some of the other groups maybe that are out there with the pro sports side?
Yeah, I can jump in first. I think a big piece is the brand loyalty. And that's, not saying the NBA and the MLB doesn't have brand loyalty, but I think there's such an affinity for the actual band. For example, like Wisconsin Badgers, some people might be solely Wisconsin Badger football fans, or they might be Wisconsin Badger, they might even prefer football. But if you got volleyball content in front of their face, they love it. They just love the brand in general. It doesn't matter the sport. It could be an Olympic sport. It could be a big football sport. But they just love that brand, which I think makes collegiate really interesting and really different. I think it also allows for, really unique, but also really challenging data collection. Okay, you have a volleyball fan who donates X amount, and then you have a football fan who lives 100 miles away. And I think it just really, builds it a little bit different perspective than anything, which I think is interesting when Zach's talking about his background and mine, like as true marketing agency in the past, like it speaks almost more clearly to that than like a one sport, one shop thing. You're always putting on different hats, different clients, different concepts. But I would say that's really, what's kind of valuable and what kind of makes collegiate sports so unique.
Yeah, I would add on to that, Lexi. I think it's a great point about college fandom. To me, is a 365-day a year thing. There's sports happening, like Lexi was talking about. Might not be football. We're going past football season now, so we're looking into basketball and the summer sports following that. But I think there's such a unique affinity for the brand, whether it's state pride, you grew up watching a team, rooting for a team, or you're an alumni. I think that's even a higher level of affinity. You've invested your time and a lot of money to graduate from this school. Your fandom's not going to wane. So that's something that we see. The fandom sticks, I think, really well with college athletics. It's not you don't see fans jump from team to team on who they're rooting for. If you grow up a Wisconsin Badgers fan, you're probably going to die a Wisconsin Badgers fan. That's just the way it is. So I think it is a really strong connection to the brand, connection to the state, connection to the university and that community.
Yeah, for sure. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, like even more so than pro, which certainly has dedicated fan bases for sure. But in the collegiate space, I think it's even more community driven with these groups of people that all studied at the same place or, lived in the same university town for 4 years. And there's such a shared experience there. It's why that you can travel anywhere in the world and find watch parties for Florida Gators. You know what I mean? It's kind of everywhere. And you have this alumni base that's totally global. On the topic of global fan bases, what strategies and technologies are you guys leveraging kind of moving forward to tap into the fans, connect with them wherever they might be, whether they're local or abroad or away? We just came out, or I shouldn't even say come out, we're still in the midst of this kind of period where we're connecting digitally with fans more than ever. So how has that kind of impacted your guys' strategies as well over the last couple of years? And where do you see that going in the future with new technologies emerging? Let's start with Zach this time.
Yeah. So kind of going off what you were talking about, Sam, with the shift that we saw generally, every business had to make this shift, and you're having to communicate and contact with your consumer or your fan base in our case in a different way. So we really do focus on being a complete digital solution. One of the big things we're focused on is just the collection and usage of fan data. So we're, Learfield's in a unique position in that we're able to plug into different pieces of the business to create, fan personas across the country. We're able to identify those fans and hit them in, a bunch of different ways. Excuse me. So that's, holistically how we're looking at this is we've got fortunately we're able to get fans back in stands, which is a huge accomplishment for everybody, but that digital appetite is still there, and it's not waning. So really focusing going in head first on strategies on how we can better tell stories from the athletic side, how we can tap into that fan base, and how we can identify those fans that we know exist today and those fans that will come on board eventually. How do we reach out to them? How do we get them engaged? So that's kind of how we're looking at the digital space and how we're leveraging technology and data.
Yeah, I would just say kind of similar to that. I think this time period has been really good in pushing us into the digital realm. I don't know. I mean, we talked about going digital, like the most simplest example is mobile ticketing, right? We talked about it, but I think this forced us to really, if we wanted to connect with our fans, we were going to have to go digital for the last 2 years. That looked like a variety of things. It looked like, doing watch parties online with like second screen experience and tradable bits and interacting with different things. We really had to go digital, and we also really had to teach and educate our fans in that moment. Like, I don't know if it wasn't trial by fire, if we would have gotten there as quickly as we needed to. So in that sense, and just it kind of worked, hand in hand with also like all this digital privacy, data privacy on our end. It just really made us look at our first party in a new way and engage with our fans so much more authentically and more, catering to what they're interested in.
Yeah, for sure. It's there's certain technologies. I think of QR code, right? Would QR codes have been picked up again as vastly as they are today if it weren't for the force to kind of switch to digital? In simple places like restaurants, right? Now you see QR codes everywhere again. It's like it's 2008. So, I'm happy for it to be back, and it's a great technology, but I think it certainly was aided, right?
I think you're seeing these trends that have started are going to continue. Like QR codes probably weren't as big of a deal 4 years ago. I went to a Georgia Tech basketball game a couple weeks ago, and they use it with everything. And just like being able to like take all these technological pieces that have been picked up and just continue them forward, I think is going to be really interesting in the years to come.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think the blockchain discussion is interesting. It's an interesting one too. Thinking about NFTs and fan moments, capturing fan moments, giving our fan base the ability to own those moments. We've seen anything from virtual trading cards to tweets to highlight videos, all things that can be, turned into NFTs and owned by fans. So that's an interesting trend that we're definitely keeping an eye on too.
Yeah, that's so true as well. So I want to shift gears a little bit, and Zach, you kind of brought this up a little bit earlier, right? Because we're in mid-December now, so we're definitely shifting out of football season, moving into more of a basketball season in the spring and through the winter. Apart from some of the big tentpole sports that we see in collegiate, like football and basketball, what other sports do you guys see kind of growing, and where is that kind of going into the future, right? I feel like now more than ever, there's a huge appetite for sports and live events. And so we're trying to get a lot of people out. Lexi, I know with you guys, it's probably on the hockey side, right? But just in general across the collegiate space in America, what sports do you see kind of growing out, and where are those going to go in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think we see this kind of creep up every year, but definitely with the appetite of not only viewing sports but consuming it on the digital side, whether it be content or live feed, we see a growth in the other sports aside from the basketball and football that you mentioned, Sam. Going into baseball season, we saw a huge increase in engagement around the College World Series this year. And again, I think it was an appetite we hadn't had it. We didn't have it last year. So I think that alone really increased the appetite for the consumption of those games and that content. The other thing I think is really interesting is the esports arena. With our Learfield, actually, we have a level next is our owned and operated esports collegiate esports league. But we've seen that gain traction across the country. We've seen incredible participation in those esports leagues. So I think that's definitely something that we'll continue to see growth in as well.
Yeah, sorry if my brother's watching, but he got a scholarship for esports, and they paid his entire college. And this was a kid that traditionally played varsity sports, played baseball all 4 years, played basketball, and went to school on an esports scholarship. And I think, like you were saying, I think that's really the future. It's super interesting. That's my first hands-on experience of it, but he had a practice facility, and he had where they actually played, and then they had sponsors. And I think that's a really interesting market to just look at, especially as we've gone virtual. That continues on, right? If we're not going out and seeing people, that continues. So I think that's really an interesting piece. Speaking more sports specific, I'm personally watching women's basketball. I think there's just a lot of interesting traction. I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on the world as women's basketball postseason kicks off after last year and all the issues with that. I think, kind of speaking to earlier, we were talking about like there's so many different sports. Like in collegiate, like men's basketball and women's basketball are compared, I think, more than like WNBA and NBA, so to speak. So I think women's basketball is to watch. I think there's a lot of conversations about it. I think there's a lot of just moving pieces. And I think from actual performance and a lot of like changes, I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, good point. I would say kind of to that. I think the whole introduction of NIL has shifted some of the ways that student athletes are able to have their stories told. So you'll see it across the landscape of collegiate sport social media, but more of that individual athlete story being told, and I think that lends itself to fandom of a sport or an athlete that you may not have watched or even cared about previously, but being able to share those stories and to consume that content might make somebody more likely to tune into a field hockey game or a sport they traditionally might not watch. But I think that human element, the ability to kind of connect with somebody on that level, kind of lends itself to expanding your horizons a little bit.
Yeah, I think just alone, like the whole Olympic sports, like gymnastics, like literally I just think of gymnastics, like what a game changer NIL is. I think we're going to have some really, like the gold medalists who came home from the USA. Like, I think we're going to have some really interesting case studies over the next couple of years. I think it's a really exciting time for those sports, especially with the year of summer and winter Olympics.
I think too, like you can't leave TikTok out of the conversation when you're talking about the growth of, non-traditional collegiate sports, right? Like it goes to exactly what you were saying. Exactly. People are becoming more of a fan of the individuals now than the team or even the sport as a whole, right? So, you're following athletes on TikTok and you become a fan of that person. It's introducing you to new sports that maybe you weren't quite aware of before. I do want to go back earlier, Zach, you were talking about esports. I'm curious from the Learfield side, how are brands becoming involved in that from a sponsorship piece? And what are they really looking to get out of, a sponsorship within the esports realm in comparison to, some of the more traditional collegiate sports?
Yeah, good question. I think it's really being able to tap into the audience. So Level Next, like I mentioned before, we're running esports tournaments across the country, partnering with our existing collegiate partners. But we just wrapped up a Madden tournament, representation across the country of these esport, not only the gamers themselves, but the consumers, which is, I think, a very unique market that is appetizing to some of the brands that we work with. So it really is, being able to be a title sponsor for a large esports tournament, again, that has a footprint in all 50 states. There's rooting interest in every nook and cranny of the country. So I think that's appetizing to the brands we're working with, and ultimately the audience that we're able to secure with a tournament like that is valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, next, guys, I would love to get, we're coming up towards the end of the year, almost 2022, can't believe it. But I would love to get your guys' predictions for where are we going in sports marketing, particularly in the college space or the industry overall in 2022. Let's get your predictions, and then we'll circle back again a year from today and see if they're right. Lexi, we'll start with you. What's your prediction for next year?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that out of the box, but I think we're going to go more digital. I think you're going to see schools doing TikTok. I think you're going to see some do it really well. I think you're going to see a lot of learnings. I think, there's always been a tech gap, but I think you're going to see it widen. I think there's going to be some schools that come out and they do it beautifully, and you're going to learn from them. And I think there's going to be, like I said, some failures, and you're going to learn from that as well. Just in general, like the NIL space, I think a year from now, we've had 6 months in it roughly. I think a year from now, we're going to look at what these student athletes are doing. And I think it's just going to really change. I think we're going to see more platforms. I think we're going to see more companies that are willing to work with them, like either setting up the deals or, actual companies. I just think we're going to look at a year from now and be like, wow, I cannot believe a year has, it feels like generations have passed. I think it's going to be total night and day by the time we get to this time next year.
Yeah, I would say I think generally from a digital standpoint, going back to again kind of the NIL conversation, I think the focus on those individual stories is going to be front and center. More focused around the athletes themselves, I think is going to be an interesting evolution of content. I think digital, and we've already seen it. I think Lexi mentioned the digital ticketing, things like that. I think we're going to see an expansion of that throughout the in-venue stuff. So we've been, talking a lot about second screen. When we think of second screen, we think of second screen at home. But how that evolves in venue, I think is going to be interesting. How fans are interacting, at the end of the quarter, halftime, or during a timeout. I think there's a lot of opportunity there as technologies advance, as stadium Wi-Fi gets better. Hopefully, I think we'll see a lot more adaptation of how our brands are able to engage with fans in stadium during an event. That I think is a big area of growth.
Yeah, awesome, guys. Thanks for that. So I know we often have folks that listen into the What's Cracking that are just getting started in the industry, right? So every time we have folks on, we love to get some advice from you guys for some of our listeners or watchers that are kind of just getting started in the space. So let's start with Zach, and just kind of what would be your advice to folks that are just getting started in the sports industry today?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I didn't really seek out a career in sports post graduation. It's been a blessing. I'll say that. I think one of the, at least in my space or our space, one of the most difficult things was really learning the ins and outs of the business. So that I don't think you can ask enough questions. I think also is to find mentors in the space is extremely important. I've been very blessed with having some awesome mentors throughout my career. But having a mentor that's been in the athletic space for a long time and has some of that knowledge under their belt, I don't think can be understated, or I don't think can be overstated. Kind of grabbing onto someone's coattails, so to speak, and really absorb as much information as you can, I think is extremely important. And then I would say have the ability to be flexible. In the college space, we all kind of wear a lot of hats, and you kind of have to do things out of your scope of your job description. I would just say embrace that. Try to learn as much as you can about things outside of your specific job function, because it does all tie together. Everything kind of works as one big machine. And the more you understand about the things that you don't directly touch, I think the better ultimately you'll be at your job.
Yeah, I guess my two main points, I think one is kind of echoing what Zach said, like ask questions. I mean, I came from a true marketing background into college athletics, and I had a coworker that literally, like, I would finish meetings and be like, okay, what did this mean? What did this mean? I don't understand this. And like, just having someone to kind of explain, I think really helped me just like get up to speed so much quicker. It allowed me to ask questions in meetings and, learn more and challenge the boxes. But I also think like it made me realize what is attainable and what is doable. I also think a big part of getting into the sports industry, or just any industry, is just take all the experience you can. I had 5 internships in college, which is a lot, but just like, I was like, that sounds interesting. Like I did social media. I did visual displays. I did like graphic design, creative, like just anything, I think, to get experience. And when I interviewed for this job here, I talked about every single internship. Like there was like oh, in A, I did this, and C, I did this. And I think, not saying you have to go have a million internships, but just being able to not say no to stuff and go out and do things, and just like, the world isn't as linear as you think it is anymore. You bounce, you zigzag, you do different things, you wear the different hats, like Zach said. And I think it's just always good, instead of being like, no, that's not my role, that's not my place, I'm not going to do that. I think it's really important to be like, no, but what can I learn from this? And just kind of know that like life takes you in many different places. You may end up in sports, leave, come back. And it's just always good to, just always be open to what people are offering you and doing an experience that way.
Yeah, exactly. I think both of you guys kind of touched on this idea of basically learning what you like and learning what you don't like, right? That's when you're wearing a lot of different hats, or when you're taking on all these different opportunities and saying yes to new experiences. Ultimately, you're learning, what do I enjoy? What am I good at? And what do I not enjoy? And what am I maybe not very good at, right? And that's just going to help you kind of refine and hone what you want to do later on down the line, right? I was fortunate enough, again, also to have a handful of co-ops and internships during my studies, and certainly helped me realize, what parts of the sports industry I would love to work in, what parts maybe I wouldn't necessarily enjoy as much to work in, and now I'm here at Tradable Bits and I love it. So, that's always a good way, right? Get the feet wet in as many new places as you can. That way you'll know where you want to kind of dive in for sure. The last question for you guys today, we like to ask, everyone that joins us, what is your most memorable fan moment? So what's that moment that when you guys are thinking back, you still get goosebumps when you think about it? This is the moment, that kind of really, kind of got you hooked on sports. Maybe it's when you were a kid, maybe it's when you're a little bit older, could maybe not even be sports. Maybe it's a concert or an event that you guys attended. But we'd love to hear that. Lexi, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I have two, and they're both very Wisconsin in description. But probably my first one was when I was a kid. My dad took me to Lambeau Field to watch the Packers and the Vikings, which is a very big division game. I was like 7. It was a Thursday night football. It was snowing. It was like the game before Christmas. It's literally like what you think of when you think of like winter sports in the northern United States. Like, and I just remember like just being there and being like, wow, this is cool. Like, I don't know. It's the first time as a kid, I think, leaving the TV and going into the venue. Like before then I've been like, oh, the Packers, super fun. But like just that experience of the snow globe. I just, drank like 20 hot chocolates, just like, I think that was like my first big love of sports and being like, wow, this is really cool, and a sense of community. And then I would not be a Badger fan / employee if I did not say the 408 game with Melvin Gordon. It was this game at Camp Randall. It was night. He broke the record in 3 quarters, and they pulled him out for the 4th. So we don't know where it would have gone, but it was like snowing. It was night. It dropped like really cold. It wasn't supposed to be that cold. I had like a sweatshirt on, like not, my mother would have died, like not prepared whatsoever. But like, it was so cool. Like people lost their minds. I think they're just both like really big, like community moments where you're like, wow, this is really cool. So those are probably my top 2.
I'm an Ohioan. I grew up an Ohio State fan, like we do. My most memorable moment probably is from the 2001 national championship. I was watching at my grandma's house with half of my extended family there. They weren't supposed to win the game. Miami fans probably still contest that Ohio State didn't win that game, but that was one of those moments where you saw the community. Like I said, my most of my family roots for the Buckeyes every Saturday, and it's one of those things that just clicked. And thing I look back at and really see the strong connection with the state of Ohio, with the Buckeyes, the whole family together, and really just all celebrating an awesome national championship win. So that's where my memory goes as a Buckeye fan.
Thanks for not picking a Big Ten championship. I don't know.
Oh, that's awesome, guys. I feel like I was there. You know what I mean? I can picture your stories, which is great. Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us today. I think it's been a great chat, and we get to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the collegiate space, which I love to do. It's it's a great part of my job, kind of working around the collegiate world. So again, appreciate you both joining us today. Thanks everybody for watching as well, and we'll see you on the next What's Kraken. Bye.